When my heart stopped, I never expected a janitor's sick daughter to save my son from drowning. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick with heat, rattling my nerves like a cage. My son, Daniel, played in the pool, splashing around with laughter that echoed against the high walls. But that laughter turned to screams. My chest tightened, breath caught in my throat. I froze, the world going silent around me. Thick water sloshed and roared as Daniel sank beneath the surface. His small hands flailed, reaching for air that wouldn't come. Panic erupted inside me like a wildfire. My fingers trembled as I tried to grab the edge of the pool for balance. Where was he? Where was anyone? A flicker of movement caught my eye. It was a girl, thin and fragile, like a wisp of smoke. She stood at the edge, her dark hair damp and splayed across her face, like shadows dancing on the water. She didn't just watch. No, she dove in, slicing through the chaos without hesitation. Something about her felt otherworldly. I had never seen her before. A janitor's daughter, they told me later. But in that heartbeat, she became my son's only hope. Time stretched thin. The water churned, bubbling over with my fears. I could barely believe my eyes. This girl was fluid, graceful, as if she belonged among the depths. My heart raced. Who was she? Why was she here? I was drowning in dread, even more so than Daniel. The seconds felt like hours, pumping adrenaline through my veins. As she pulled my son towards the edge, I could see her face, stricken yet determined. The darkness beneath the surface seemed to cling to her, but she fought it. Her own chips of pain glittered in her eyes, like starbursts in the night sky. I gasped as she broke the surface, pulling Daniel up like he was made of feathers. He was coughing, sputtering, tears pouring down his little face. I reached for him, clawing through the air, desperate to make him whole again. But something was off. The girl's energy heightened the air, sending chills racing down my spine. What had she just done? The pool area erupted in shouts and gasps. Someone was whispering about her father, how he was always struggling with illness. How did she find the strength to brave the water while her world was crumbling? There was a strange connection, an inexplicable pull between us. I felt it deep in my bones. A murmur floated through the crowd. Is she a mermaid? Someone laughed nervously, but we all knew the truth. She was beyond that. She was a hero, a reflection of hope in a sea of chaos. But as she crawled out of the pool, breathing heavily, I couldn't shake the feeling that something dark lingered beneath the surface of this miracle. I was still holding my son, cradling him like a fragile treasure. Yet, why did I sense a storm brewing around this girl? What secrets lay hidden below her brave facade? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days that followed the incident felt like a waking dream. I stood at the threshold of reality, uncertain whether to step forward or retreat. Daniel had bounced back remarkably, his laughter returning like the sun after a storm. But I, the parent, was still living in that moment, the moment when my heart had almost stopped for good. I had witnessed the line between life and death shift dangerously close to my own child. Each splash at the pool felt like a hollow echo of that day, a reminder of the damp cold that had wrapped around my heart in those agonizing seconds. Even as I forced myself to smile while watching him play, my gaze often wandered, searching for her, the girl who had saved him. Had she been a figment of hope, or was she real, woven into the tapestry of our lives now? Her name was Mia. I learned it in hushed conversations among the parents, in whispers that still held reverence. A girl from the shadows, but now illuminated by her courage. Someone spoke of her illness-ridden father, how she often took on responsibilities that belied her youth. As a flood of empathy washed over me, I felt a strange mixture of admiration and sadness. How had she found a small light in her seemingly overshadowed world when I struggled to emerge from my own darkness? The urge to seek her out became an obsession. I wanted to thank her not just for Daniel, but for showing me what bravery looked like, pulling at a heart that had all but locked itself away in fear. One afternoon, I found myself walking to the school where she and my son attended classes, trying to present myself with calmness, though I could feel my heart beating heavy like a drum, processing all the unfinished emotions swirling inside. The hallways were filled with the energy of children coming to life, their laughter weaving a tapestry of innocence that felt almost foreign to me. I took a deep breath, letting it settle in the stillness of the moment as I approached the janitor's closet. The door was slightly ajar, and I could hear her voice, soft yet tinged with a sense of weariness, speaking to someone inside. "Mia, just take those trash bags out. They'll be okay," came a man's voice, hoarse yet soothing. Undoubtedly her father. That I hesitated, combating feelings of guilt and a rising tremor of uncertainty. Would I be intruding? Would they welcome an outsider into their world, a stranger whose child had been saved at such a cost? But in that moment, as Mia stepped into view, her face bearing the glow of determination intermixed with exhaustion, I could no longer hold back. "Mia," I called out, my voice propelled by desperation and gratitude. She turned, her dark eyes wide, as if I had breached a boundary she didn't expect to cross. Her lips parted as if to speak, but I quickly rushed forward, feeling the weight of words in my throat. "Thank you for saving my son. I can't express how grateful I am." That a flicker of surprise swept across her features, replaced by an unexpected shyness. "It's nothing," she murmured, her gaze dropping to the floor. "You would have done the same for me." I wanted to understand her more, to peel back the layers of her bravado, yet fear hung between us. Helplessness loomed, as I glimpsed the scars of untold stories etched into her skin. I sensed a million unexplainable burdens behind her gentle smile, each one pulling her deeper into her own uncharted S.A. "Oh, you want to sit for a moment?" I offered. "Perhaps we could find solace, share fragments of our stories." Instead, her eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "I shouldn't be here. I need to go," Mia whispered, turning away. An unexpected chill wrapped around my heart. It felt like a door slamming shut, an invitation lost in the tremor of fear. Before I could respond, she slipped past me, disappearing into the throbbing chaos of children, the innocence shielding her own shadows. My heart turned heavy again, realizing she carried burdens even heavier than my own. A depth of pain I had barely grasped. That night, as I tucked Daniel into bed, his soft breaths providing a soothing rhythm, I couldn't shake the image of Mia, the girl who had saved my son but needed saving in her own right. I had to reach out, to connect the fragile thread between our worlds before it frayed and disappeared altogether. But just as determination took root, the earth beneath me shifted. A knock at my door startled me from thought. I opened it and found a shadow in my driveway. An ambulance. Lights flashing in the evening haze, a sinking dread filled my chest. Realizing the sirens we had feared for Mia's father had reached us at last, amplifying the darkness that threatened to drown not only her, but the fragile bond we were just beginning to forge. Before I could process my racing thoughts, a paramedic approached, tears glistening in their eyes, and uttered words that would forever alter our lives. "That I am sorry. We've lost him." Every breath felt forced, an anvil crushing my heart. I staggered back, feeling the malice of time fold in on itself, wondering how to reach out to the girl who had rescued Daniel when life seemed set on taking everything else away. A connection formed by desperation hung in the air between us, taut and vulnerable. It was a pull I knew would have to navigate amidst the storm that promised to descend upon us both. The next few days blurred into a haze of disbelief and sorrow. The house, once filled with the light of laughter and the echoes of Daniel's boyish enthusiasm, now felt cold and desolate. Each tick of the clock punctuated the absence of Mia's father, an inexplicable vacancy that shrouded everything in a blanket of grief. The news of his passing rippled through the community like an unstoppable wave, washing over us with relentless force. Though I was still grappling with my own emotions, the thought of Mia haunted me. She was merely a child, yet she had been forced to confront the fragility of life far too soon. Flashes of her pained expression from our brief encounter lingered in my mind, the warmth of her smile now replaced by shadows of an intense sorrow that mirrored my own. I longed to comfort her, to let her know she was not alone in this storm. That it felt absurd to believe I could be of any assistance. yet I couldn't shake the feeling that we were somehow tied together by the threads of our chaos. This shared heartbreak demanded we reach out, but how could I do so without intruding on her grief? With every pulse of torment within me, the need to connect only intensified that I decided to take action. I gathered an assortment of items, a knitted blanket, the one my mother had made for Daniel, fresh-baked cookies, and a small potted plant. Perhaps it wasn't much, but it felt like an offering, a gesture of understanding to express that she wasn't alone. I placed everything in a basket, letting my fingers linger on the edges of each item, finding solace in their warmth. With the basket lifted before me, I made my way to MIA's home. Time seemed to slow around me, and each step felt heavier than the last. I knew losing her father would shatter the little pieces of light she had so valiantly fought for. I felt that darkness clawing at me too, threatening to crush my heart under the weight of it all. As I approached the house, the cracks in the facade began to peel back the illusion of normalcy. The blinds were drawn tight, and the garden, once vibrant and filled with the laughter of children playing amid blooms, now looked forlorn and neglected. I could feel my resolve faltering as doubt whispered in my ear. Would she accept this gesture? Would it be seen as sympathy, or would it come off as patronizing? I hesitated at the door, the basket clutched tightly in my trembling hands. Finally, summoning every ounce of courage, I knocked. Moments stretched like hours before I heard shuffling within, and the door creaked open, revealing Mia. Her dark hair fell haphazardly over her face, eyes so familiar yet distant, as if the world outside was too much to bear. I felt the sharpness of her pain like a palpable force vibrating in the air between us. Yet her presence sparked a flicker of hope that perhaps she could still find solace in our shared experience. Mia, I started, and her gaze darted toward the ground, as though the weight of her grief made it impossible to hold my gaze. I brought you something. Her eyes lifted, curiosity momentarily pushing the heaviness away. What is it? A little something to remind you that you're not alone, I said, gesturing to the basket I had set down gingerly at her feet. You don't have to go through this alone. I am here if you need someone to talk to. Her breath hitched, an indiscernible mixture of gratitude and hurt washing across her features. I can't, she whispered, stepping back as if scared that the weight of my words could break her. Please, let me help, I pleaded, desperately seeking a connection. I know you're going through so much, and it's okay to let someone in. Then, in an instant, the facade crumbled. MIA's eyes brimmed with tears, vulnerability spilling forth. I don't know how, she choked, her small shoulders quaking with the weight of her emotions. Everything it hurts so much that I stepped forward, mirroring her pain, my own heart laid bare. I understand, and it's okay to feel that way. It might feel isolating, but you are strong. Look how brave you were for Daniel. You saved him. You were his lifeline. This. She finally stepped closer, reaching out tentatively. The barrier cracked open, allowing us to glimpse each other's hearts. In that tenuous moment, I held her hand, hoping to be a beacon of empathy in her darkness. I stood there with her, feeling her warmth bleed into my frigid fear. A voice called from inside, the haunting echo of loss. Mia? It was her mother, confusion weaving itself through her words. I could sense the layers of turmoil behind that voice, the struggle of a family shattered. MIA's expression shifted dangerously, a blend of conflicting emotions swirling like a tempest. I have to go, she gasped, retracting her hand. No. Not again. My heart cried out desperately as she pulled away from me, her retreat leaving me once again on the outside. I was left grasping onto air, the fleeting connection dissolving into the ether as her eyes darted in fear. Wait, please, I shouted, feeling the raw anguish of helplessness that swallowed me whole. But before I could say another word, she vanished into the shadowy hallway of her home, retreating into the depths of despair. I turned to leave, feeling the sharp sting of unshed tears threatening to spill over. I felt a sudden warmth at my ankle. Glancing down, I saw the small potted plant, its delicate flowers trembling in the wind. It had tipped over during the encounter, scattered dirt and roots lying bare, almost like a metaphor for our conversation's fragile, in need of nurturing. What did it mean? Perhaps it meant hope was still there, just buried beneath layers of grief. As I knelt to collect the fallen plant, my heart raced with uncertainty. An invisible thread had been intricately woven between Mia and me during that brief encounter, one that would demand attention and care, and just as I turned to leave, the sound of muffled voices inside caught my attention. The words reached me, sharp and open like an unexpected wound. "We can't afford to keep the house like this. We'll have to sell." I froze, rooted to the spot as realization punched me in the gut. The world I created to protect Daniel now teetered as precariously as MIA's. The fragility of life pressed down heavily upon me, accentuating the urgency of connection, the need to rescue one another from our visions of loss before it was too late. But as I stood encased in dread, imagining MIA's world swallowed by emptiness, an even deeper darkness loomed on the horizon. The fight was far from over. The battle for hope had only just begun. In the days that followed my visit with Mia, a sense of heaviness settled over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that our encounter had cracked open something profound, but in the aftermath, every small, kind gesture I attempted felt like a feeble burden that might shatter her even more. The thought of helping Mia became an obsession, and yet I was paralyzed by uncertainty. How could I possibly offer comfort when my own heart felt shattered? Every time I glanced out my window, I found myself searching for Mia playing in the yard, but all I saw was a barren patch of grass, overgrown with weeds as nature began reclaiming the space. Those moments were an unsettling reminder of the warmth that once colored the neighborhood. I felt as though grief had woven itself like a thick fog through our lives, blanketing even the simplest joys. Days turned to weeks, and each new sunrise felt like an invitation to share my love. Yet I found myself stuck in a web of hesitation, entangled by the fear of overstepping boundaries. After all, Mia's family was barely keeping afloat. I had heard hushed murmurs about the funds for Daniel's funeral weighing heavily on her mother. The weight of loss was palpable, dragging them down into a darkness I feared might swallow them whole. One afternoon, as I sat staring at the mess of scattered papers in my living room, I was surprised by a knock at the door. My heart raced as I opened it, half expecting to see Mia, only to be met with a neighbor named Mrs. Wilmot. She stood on my doorstep, looking frazzled, her voice laced with urgency. "Have you seen Mia?" she asked, her brow knitted in worry. "Her mother hasn't come out for days." I've not had no answer, a knot twisted in my stomach. "I haven't seen her since that day. I thought maybe they needed space. Or maybe despair," Mrs. Wilmot said softly. "I know what it's like to lose someone close. Sometimes it's overwhelming." I nodded, sadness threading through me like a storm. "What should we do?" "Let's go check on them," she urged, a spark of determination taking shape in her voice. Before I knew it, we were walking together down the street towards Mia's home. The air grew thick with anticipation, tension bubbling between us as our minds raced with possibilities of what awaited us behind the door. As we approached the familiar residence, I felt the same apprehension as before, but with an invigorating sense of purpose now, fighting to rise above the darkness surrounding us. Mrs. Wilmot knocked firmly, the sound echoing against the stillness. We waited, the quiet stretch of time becoming increasingly taut, until the door finally creaked open. There stood Mia's mother, her face pale, eyes ringed with dark shadows. The dim light of the hallway behind her made her look even more fragile. Mrs. Shaw, Mrs. Wilmot said with gentle authority, "We're here to check on you and Mia. Is everything all right?" Mia's mother seemed taken aback, as if she had forgotten how to engage in an ordinary conversation. For a fragile moment, the mask of composure fell away, revealing an abyss of despair swirling in her gaze. "We am fine," she stammered, but the cracks in her voice spoke volumes. "Can we come in?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, yet every word felt like a lifeline thrown into churning waters. After a long pause, she stepped aside, allowing us to enter. The living room was dim, furniture covered in dust, remnants of faded memories haunting the air. I'd never seen it like this. It was as if their space had become a mausoleum for the laughter that had once filled it. "Where's Mia?" I ventured, unsure of how to change the atmosphere pressing down upon us like an unseen weight. Her voice trailed off, and the gesture of her hand pointed toward a darkened corner of the room. "She mostly stays in her room." A chill ran through me, and a rally of concern overwhelmed my senses. "May we see her?" Slowly, she nodded, almost reluctantly. as if aware that Mia might be slipping away from her too. We made our way to the small room at the end of the hall. I knocked softly on the door. Mia? Silence. My heart raced as I thought I could feel it pounding in my ears. Mia, it's me, I said softly, my heart aching with every beat. I brought someone to see you. After a breathless moment, the door creaked open just enough for a sliver of her face to peek through. The brightness in her eyes had dulled, and I saw the flicker of that initial vulnerability flashing back into a defensive shadow. Yet there was still enough of her spirit left to let hope seep through to go away. She muttered, her small body barely taking up space behind the door. Please, I pleaded, searching her eyes. We're worried about you. The door opened wider, and I caught a glimpse of the room, a haze of clothes strewn across the floor, forgotten toys pending rescue from the shadows. I don't want to see anyone, she murmured, her voice raw. Not even me? Remember? You're not alone in this. I pressed gently, willing her to recognize the bonds we created in that moment. The air grew heavier, suffocating any lingering hope. I could see the precipice of her pain crumbling in her eyes, and I feared that if she let go, she might fall into the aching silence I had begun to understand too well. Mia, I need you to hold on, I whispered, stepping through the doorway, hoping to anchor her back from that brink. I know it hurts so much, but I promise there's a way through it. I'm here for you. Suddenly, the sound of someone crying echoed from within the room, a sound so heartbreaking that my breath caught in my throat. No longer able to hesitate, I stepped forward. But as I approached, ready to hold on to her in her despair, I noticed a glint of something in Mia's hand, a small, crumpled piece of paper that trembled just as much as she did. What's that? I asked gently, my heart twisting as I watched her gaze harden. I don't want to talk about it, she snapped, but her fingers clutched it tighter, as if she was guarding a hidden treasure. I exchanged a glance with Mrs. Wilmot, and though we were met with uncertainty, we took slow steps deeper into the dark thicket of her sorrow. There was more to this story than I could yet understand, secrets intertwined with her grief that might tether her down further. Just then, her mother appeared in the doorway, her eyes darting between us. Mia, she called, the tremors in her tone carrying a weight that struck me like a blow. You need to eat something. I'm trying. I promise. Embedded in that moment was a truth more compelling than words. Their need for each other, a yearning for connection amidst their profound isolation. Mia's small face contorted as tears streamed down her cheeks. In an instant, the tension shattered. I can't, she wailed, crumbling beneath the weight of a pain far too heavy for her to bear alone. And just like that, with all of the darkness around us, I knew what I needed to do. I stepped forward, wrapped my arms around her. You can let it out, I murmured. You can't fight it alone, Mom, she cried, and in that heart-wrenching response, everything shifted. The barriers between them trembled with possibility, and I silently prayed it would finally breach. It was then that I caught sight of that crumpled piece of paper falling from her fingers, tumbling like a small secret into the air, landing softly near our feet. As I glanced down, a chill enveloped my heart. There, illuminated in the muted light, was a weather-beaten drawing, Daniel's name scrawled against a backdrop of vibrant colors. The last thread connecting them, a bond they had built before the loss. It struck me like a wave of realization. This was no ordinary drawing. This was a lifeline, a message from an invisible bridge tying them together. The battle was far from over. Hope lay not just within our individual journeys, but entwined in the uncharted territory of love still waiting to be discovered. Yet as quickly as this energy surged, a heavy dread settled within me. Just as Mia and her mother began to connect in their own semblance of healing, I received a text that shattered that fragile moment into a million pieces. I glanced at my phone, my heart dropping. The message was simple but chilling. I need to talk. It's about Daniel. As the fear coursed through my body, so too did the desperate awareness that dark truths lay beneath, waiting to peel back the layers of hope we had just started to grasp. The air in Mia's room grew thick with the unspoken words that hung above us like a storm cloud, threatening to burst. My heart raced not just from the weight of that crumpled drawing at my feet, but from the sudden urgency of the message on my phone. Daniel's name loomed large in my mind, every syllable echoing the uncertainty that had begun to populate my thoughts. Mia, I breathed, pulling back from her teary embrace slightly, though not letting go entirely. What's going on with this drawing? I pointed down to the paper, trying to redirect the moment, but I could see that her eyes were still shimmering with pain. Daniel, he drew that the day before, she whispered, her voice wavering. He was so proud of it, ready to show the world. I thought it would make him happy that I squeezed her shoulder gently. It's beautiful, Mia. Just like the bond you shared. I could see her frustration bubbling just beneath the surface. I needed to tread carefully. She was at an emotional precipice, and the last thing I wanted was to push her over the edge. Meanwhile, Mrs. Wilmot stood by, her expression flip-flopping between concern for the girl and anxiety for the mother, who waited silently in the doorway, a ghost of the mother I once knew. The silence was heavy, pregnant with unresolved pain. I turned back to Mia, noticing her stare had wandered. My heart sank further as I followed her gaze. She was looking at an old photo hanging on the wall. A trip to the beach, the sun setting vibrantly behind their laughter, hands intertwined. Mia, what if I tell you that Daniel loved the things you loved? I offered softly, feeling the words flow from somewhere deep within. He would want to see you happy again. You both. You were each other's light. In that moment, I saw a small flicker of something in her eyes, a fleeting glimmer of hope, the possibility of what could be if she allowed herself to navigate through her grief instead of letting it overwhelm her. But just as quickly, the darkness returned, weighing her down again. Mom. She snapped suddenly, pulling herself out of our embrace and turning back toward her mother, still standing despondently at the door. You don't understand. You don't even care. The accusation stung in the air, hanging over us like a dark mist. Mia's mother winced, and I witnessed the cracks in her facade deepen, jagged lines etched from the toll of alternating between caring for her grieving child and fighting her own battles. Her eyes were filled with horror, as if the truth of their reality was breaking free, demanding to be acknowledged. I do care, Mia, she pleaded, her voice breaking. I'm just trying to survive too. I thought we were doing this together. Survival. The word echoed in my mind as my own heart tightened at the twisted realities they faced. Wasn't that what we were all trying to do, survive in the aftermath of something so surreal that it twisted our souls? I found myself stepping into that space between them, eager to transform this despair into a sliver of reconciliation. You both are here for each other in ways you might not see yet. But it's going to take more than just words to heal. A strange tension hung in the air. One moment, they were two people lost in their grief, and in the next, their souls were yearning for connection with each other through that very pain. I could see emotions erupting just beneath the surface, raw and ready to explode. Suddenly, the sound of my phone vibrating violently against the wooden floor broke through the thick haze. I glanced down, my heart lurching when I saw the name again. Tom. My husband's face loomed over my thoughts now, oblivion ringing in my head as its potential weight washed over me. I have to take this, I announced, much to my own surprise. Without waiting for a reaction, without thinking of what might happen next, I stepped out of the room, shutting the door to contain the fragile atmosphere I was leaving behind. The moment it clicked closed, I felt the burden pressing inward, isolating me as I hurried to the side of the house, where I could gather my thoughts and manage my own chaos. Hello? I answered, striving for composed, but hearing my own shuddering breath seep through. Can we meet? Tom's voice came through strong yet subdued with urgency. It's about Daniel. At that moment, the world around me grew muted, like being submerged in deep water, the rising panic mixing with uncertainty. What do you mean? I asked, every pulse of my heart echoing the imbalances of this morning's unresolved conflicts. Just can we talk in person? There's something I discovered. It's about how he may have really died. The panic escalated into a tidal wave of fear. What do you mean? I repeated, more desperately. I felt torn, standing on the precipice of one painful reality, while another threatened to pull me into its depths. Some details don't add up. I need you to listen. Please, he pressed gently, almost pleading. It'll come, was all I managed as I wrestled against the raging tide of emotions surging within me. As I ended the call and stood there, the implications of Tom's words washed over me like ice. The clarity of his request was terrifying. It could tug on threads I dreaded exploring. And yet, as I turned around to walk back inside, I felt the weight of that drawing and the moment shared between Mia and her mother the materialization of grief tangled within love. Would I be able to find a way to help them heal, while also confronting the storm brewing in my own heart? Stepping back into the room, back into the fragile web of their lives, I felt the softness of hope digging deeper roots, even as the storm gathered strength to strike. I wouldn't just be a witness to their healing. Somehow, I needed to ensure that we all endured this awakening together. But just as a flicker of determination ignited, a coach horn honked from the street outside, followed by the frantic voices of children. It was the neighbors, rallying for a collective cheer. They were gathered to hold a fundraiser barbecue, bringing both the warmth of community and a glimmer of distraction. Would it be enough? Would it really matter against the backdrop of secrets looming in the shadows? A question echoed deeply in my soul: could the gathering warmth extend beyond grief's shadows, weaving its light into the lives we feared might not survive? And as that uncertainty coiled around me, the stakes of the unraveling night only deepened when I felt the prickle of another text vibrate against my palm. You need to know the truth. It revolves around Mia and her mother. The ground beneath me shifted, the sense of impending peril colliding with the fragile spark of hope within my heart. I needed to go back to bridge their connection and face the secrets buried in the twilight of our shared grief. But what lay ahead remained a mystery, one that terrified me deeply. The air felt electric as I stepped back into the room, the weight of unresolved issues still thick and tangible, like fog refusing to lift. I glanced at Mia and her mother, their eyes darting between each other, the charged atmosphere hanging like ripe fruit ready to drop. It was clear that the circuit of anger and love was still sparking dangerously and needed to resolve before it became entirely destructive. Mia, I began softly, breaking the tension clouding the room. Your mom loves you. You may not see it right now, but that love is fighting to reach you even through this darkness. I could feel the air tense again, but I plunged ahead. You both are stumbling through grief, and that can sometimes blind us to the people we need most. The flicker in Mia's eyes turned to a spark, but her defensiveness still cast a shadow. You don't understand. Mia's voice trailed off, frustration turning to sorrow. I don't know if I can ever forgive her for not saving him. Her mother's response was wounded, as if Mia's words had struck her directly in the heart. I didn't know. I was trying to be strong for you. But I was just as lost, Mia. We both lost him. The light in her eyes dimmed, replaced by palpable shame and regret. Just then, the coach horn from outside honked again, and cries of laughter drifted in, juxtaposing the somber bubble we had formed. Maybe I hesitated, considering the strange and unexpected thought that surfaced as a way to break through their barrier. What if we went outside? Maybe a little bit of laughter from the neighbors could remind us of the joy that still exists. Mia's head tilted slightly, in expression of pure vulnerability crossing her face. Joy, she echoed, as if testing the word on her tongue, a tentative whisper in the face of her grief. The sudden sound of music and clinking glasses from the gathering outside increased my resolve. I could see that her spirits, though heavy, were inching forward, hungry for any chance to escape their abyss. Mia, let's take a short break, I urged. Just for a little while. You don't have to smile, just come with us. Let her love find you, and let's find a bit of peace together. You both need each other. I broke the earnestness of my eyes to bring a smile I barely felt. Plus, I heard they're grilling the best burgers in town. A small giggle escaped her lips, the sound almost foreign and fragile like spun glass, and for a moment I believed she might acquiesce. Searching her mother's gaze, Mia seemed to seek permission, and I held my breath as Mrs. Wilmot took an uncertain step forward, her hands trembling like twigs caught in a sudden breeze. Mia, I want to try, she murmured, her voice breaking through the barrier of pain. Let's give it a chance. Just for a little while. The words dangled in the air, a lifebuoy thrown into turbulent waters, and slowly, hesitantly Mia nodded, as if swept away by the force of the moment. As we made our way down the hallway, a gentle breeze slipped through an open window, carrying with it the scent of summer and the laughter of children splashing in joy. My heart lifted at the sight through the glass clusters of neighbors, bolstered by the spirit of togetherness. If nothing else, maybe this could nudge them toward healing. But just as we stepped outside, I felt a familiar tremor of anxiety pinch my heart as my phone vibrated again, Tom's name flashing across the screen. I silenced it and tucked it back into my pocket no matter what I might learn from him later on. At that moment, nothing mattered more than uniting these tender hearts. Come on, I called back to Mia, flashing a grin as I gestured her toward the crowd. There's a whole world waiting out here, let's dip our toes in, shall we? But just as we reached the porch steps, the sound of laughter came to a sudden halt, replaced by gasps that echoed through the air, shattering the momentary sense of relief we had found. I spun around, the world shift unsettling beneath my feet, and I saw them children encircling the pool area, shouts of panic rising up, voices rising higher as they pointed frantically. Stop! Get away from the water! My heart ached with sudden understanding as the crowd erupted into confusion, pulling Mia and her mother back instinctively. I didn't even bother to make sense of the chaos. Instinct overtook. My pulse raced as I forced my way through the sudden mob of tangled limbs and voices. What happened? I shouted, desperate to bring focus to the situation. That was when the frantic cries crystallized into understanding someone had fallen in. I could see the panic in the children's eyes as they screamed for help, their small faces painted with terror as they pointed toward the deep end of the pool. He's drowning. Time slowed, and everything within me surged into combat mode. I shoved through the mass of people as they began to part like the seas, exposing a small figure struggling against the water's unforgiving grasp, a boy no older than 10 bobbing above and below the surface, fighting with all his might to stay afloat. He needs help. I felt adrenaline surge in my veins as I dove forward, hearing screams blend into one relentless pull against the reality unfolding before me. Mia? I called back, my voice strained against the surrounding noise. Stay with your mom. Even as tears pooled in her eyes, I could see her confusion battling with concern, and I didn't have the resolve to process the fear etched across her face. My instincts took over as I slipped off my shoes, feeling cold tiles underfoot as I sprinted toward the edge of the pool, my heart racing in rhythm with the panic rippling through the crowd. I couldn't let another child drown in the currents of despair. But deep down, uncertainty gnawed at my thoughts. The shadows lingering in my own life felt so small compared to the heart-stopping urgency before me. Yet the grip of fear tight in my chest reminded me of the truths I had chosen to ignore. As I plunged into the rushing water, the icy chill enveloped me, and I fought against disbelief. Would I really be able to bring him back from the depths, when I might be drowning in my own grief as well? The pull of destiny was forcing my hand, tearing down barriers that I had built around my own broken heart. And as I hit the water's surface, the reality of the moment dawning truly hit. Confrontation between love and tragedy had immersed us all, but the answer lay hidden in the depths yet to be revealed. The water closed around me, dark and unyielding, consuming every ounce of my fear and determination. I kicked and propelled myself deeper, chasing the frantic splashes of the boy whose life depended on my every decision. The surface above was merely a distant dream, the laughter and joy of the gathering now drowned out by the echoing slaps of water thrashing against my body. His tiny frame bobbed helplessly, and instinct kicked in like a sharp jolt of adrenaline. I reached out, fingertips grazing his shirt as I pulled him close, wrapping my arm around his frail body to keep him from slipping away. The thrust of panic surged through me when I met his terrified gaze. "I've got you. Hold on tight," I shouted, my voice a futile effort against the chaos we were both submerged in. With sheer will, I kicked upward, urgency blending with exhaustion as I fought against the water's grasp. Below, the world became a blur, faces contorted in fear, mouths forming soundless screams as I brought the boy nearer to the surface. I couldn't fail. I wouldn't let him sink like a message lost in a bottle. The sun sliced through the water above us, illuminating the path ahead. Every thud of my heart echoed the fear of losing not just this child, but losing control of my own fractured soul. Breaking through, air rushed into my lungs as we emerged. I gasped before turning to see the horrified faces of the onlookers staring down at us. Their eyes were filled with a mix of hope and dread, and I could hear the urgent cries of a few adults calling for help. "Catch him!" I cried out, struggling to hoist the boy onto my shoulder, his limbs weak and trembling. As I struggled towards the edge, I felt my own strength wane, muscles burning from the effort of keeping us both afloat. Panic flickered across my mind, whispering doubts. What if I couldn't make it? What if I became just another one of life's lost stories? Somehow, hands reached for the boy just as I managed to hoist him over the ledge. Relief flooded through me as I felt a moment of hope ignite when another bystander grabbed the child and pulled him to safety. The moment was fleeting, like salt blown away by the wind, as I still floundered in the water, clinging desperately to the edge. Out of nowhere, warmth encircled my arm, and someone began hoisting me out. My vision swirled, resisting clarity as I was dragged onto the concrete, gasping for breath, throat raw and aching. As I lay there, battling nausea in the sun-drenched air, I caught sight of Mia, her ashen face now concrete in concern. She stood rigid, anchored outside the chaos, yet something in her eyes shifted. In that moment, I saw the flicker of resilience and empathy fighting through her grief. The air hummed with anticipation. I glanced up to see the boy struggling to catch his breath, coughing sputters of water as onlookers surrounded him, their voices blending into a cacophony of whispered relief. Yet there, amidst the heartbeats of salvation, the dams that held back the pain from my own heart began to crack. That I brought my gaze back to Mia. The gravity pulling us was heavier than water. Our wounds dipped into the same well of loss. Yet here we stood, our paths somehow entwined in a moment that defied despair. A flick on the surface hinted at traces of light, and I knew it was time to stoke that flame. But just then, a strained cry shattered the fragile moment. "Stop moving him. I'm a doctor." A woman, bursting onto the scene, pushed her way through the crowd around the boy, her voice shaking with authority that only desperation could summon. The air around us thickened with uncertainty and dread. I stared back at Mia, who had taken a step forward, clutching her mother's arm as she mirrored my own fears. Would this child's life be salvaged? Would hope seep into those hollow places aching for comfort? The realization hit our worlds were interlaced in this heart-stopping drama. Yet the fragility of life hung in the balance. "Stay back," the woman barked at the crowd. "We have to clear the space. Give him room to breathe." Anxiety dripped from her every word, infecting the air with an unseen clenched "He?" My voice quivered, barely making it past the tightening grip of doubt. But instead of reassurance, the talk of severed hope wrapped around us like chains. Mia's mother gasped, her face a portrait of despair that mirrored my own as we both stepped back unconsciously. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but at that moment, we were all drowning, caught in the rip currents of an experience we couldn't fully control. "Please," I whispered, more to myself than anyone else, a prayer for strength I wasn't sure I deserved. I looked at the boy struggling beneath the flurry of activity. But another revelation struck me just as I was grappling with my own fears. I could feel Mia's anxious energy rising like a tide next to me. She turned abruptly, searching for something. "Where's my dad?" she stated, her voice sharp yet trembling. Mrs. Wilmot faltered, uncertainty colliding with fear. Suddenly, unfamiliar dread gripped my heart. I hadn't considered the truth of her father's absence. "Mia," but before I could finish, an alarming cry muffled but sharp cut through the atmosphere. "Mom, where's Dad?" It rang like a funeral bell through the air, the world having grown still, as I watched Mia's entire universe collapse in an instant, a dam flooding with grief pulling us all into its depths. And right in the very core of that sunset reality, as the laughter of before crumbled and tensions mounted like an endless tide, I realized some wounds bleed tangibly, and some can only fester beneath the surface, hidden from view, yet threatening to overwhelm everything in their path. The air was thick with the scent of wet concrete and the metallic tang of blood as I struggled to catch my breath, each gasp serving as a reminder of the chaos now infusing this once joyous day. Anxiety seeped through my every pore. The fear for my own son mingled violently with the sorrow flooding Mia's face. I couldn't shake the chilling notion that each moment stretched on, pulling us into an abyss where hope felt impossibly distant. Mia stood frozen, eyes wide and glazed as she searched the throng for her father. I could only imagine the swirl of panic inside her, so young, yet carrying the burden of uncertainty like a heavy cloak. I took a hesitant step toward her, extending a hand that trembled with the weight of unspoken support. "Mia, I'm here. Whatever happens," but her gaze was already lost, unfocused, and I faltered under the enormity of her despair. The small group surrounding the boy was just a swirl of indistinguishable forms now. Their frantic whispers and urgent gestures melded into a single pulse of anxiety, but the boy was not yet out of danger, and it seemed that time waged war against his fragile hold on life. Suddenly, a familiar silhouette burst through the crowded janitor, his jumpsuit loose and stained but unmistakably him. "What happened?" he demanded, urgency sharpening his features as he pushed past onlookers. I could see the moment recognition crossed his eyes when he realized whose life was tethered to this moment. "Mia," he called out, the raw edge of worry cracking his voice. She turned towards him as though pulled by an invisible string, her lip trembling, a whirlwind of emotions swirling beneath her surface. I took another step back, torn between comfort and the chaos unfolding before me. But before I could process this minuscule opening of light, the air shattered again with the cries of the boy. His chest rose and fell erratically as the doctor urged him to breathe, the crowd holding its breath collectively, their faces pale mirrors of dread. "I can't watch this." I turned my back to the impending doom, unable to witness this young life balance precariously on a thread. What if Wei felt a hand on my shoulder, and I spun back, the janitor's eyes clouded filled with the same heavy hopelessness that gripped my chest. "They're trying. That's all we can do right now," he whispered, a steady reassurance cutting through my own spiraling thoughts. "What if it's not enough?" My words came out in shards, a quiet plea birthed in anguish that echoed out into the void of uncertainty around us. At that moment, Mia lunged toward her father. "Dad!" she cried out, her voice piercing the heavy web of tension. Her father clasped her shoulders, his eyes unfocused with stress. In that single gesture of her running to him, their world began touching back down to earth, their unspoken bond cutting through the storm of grief. I watched them, thinking of my relationship with my son, then shifted my gaze back to the chaos that hadn't quieted. The doctor pressed fists against the boy's tiny chest, forcing air back into the lifeblood of this situation. And in that frantic moment, I thought of the moments when my own son looked up to me, when his laughter filled the space around us, light enough to shatter the weight of the world. Suddenly, the boy coughed a deep, guttural sound that resonated through the collective heart of the crowd, pulling us all back to the present. Hope flickered, but it was in that moment, somewhere between the breaths of relief and the clouds of despair, I caught sight of his mother, disheveled, frantic, her eyes brimming with tears. "Is he okay?" Her voice wavered, clinging to a fragile thread of hope. It was raw and filled with a kind of desperation that felt familiar. I could feel the echoes of my own fears vibrating in the air around us, that "I am not sure, just hold on." The janitor's voice was taut, but I could see the flickers of resolve in his search for reassurance, and it gave me a comfort that didn't linger long. With renewed urgency, we stood sentry over the child, an unspoken pact weaving us together in the most grim of. Tables turned, yet I felt something shift beneath the surface. Mia grasped her father's hand, her voice growing stronger as she whispered something to him. It was an exchange that felt almost like a secret promise. I longed to know its weight, but as I took a calming breath, my mind began to whirl. Every fiber of my being wanted to break down and weep for all that we could lose. What awaited us as humans, tethered by suffering and joy. Through it all, a flickering ember grew brighter, glowing against the shadows. Moments of connection between fragmented spirits, their longing for hope igniting a fire in the depths of their sorrow. But in the midst of these newfound connections, an unexpected voice shattered the air, swift and sharp. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me. Now." It was a police officer, his expression tight with urgency, cutting his way into the circle of onlookers at that moment. As I felt the weight of his call prepare to pull Mia's father away, panic unfurled violently in my chest. "Wait, where are you taking him?" I involuntarily interjected, realizing the implications. MIA's eyes widened, the weight of fear smothering the small hope that had just begun to breathe. As her father met my gaze with confusion and desperation, I felt my heart fracture anew. "I have to go. I have to," but I wouldn't let him go without a fight, and as I stepped forward, hand outstretched, I knew something monumental was about to happen. Every fiber in me screamed against the currents of fate pulling us apart. They would not take that moment from us, that fragile light amidst dark waters. And as the officer began to pull at MIA's father, the tears began to flow, carrying with them the weight of the world, leaving us all racing in the wake of uncertainty. The sirens wailed in the distance, an angry reminder of the chaos that beckoned just beyond our grasp. Each wail tore through the heavy air and rattled my insides, as if echoing the pulse of despair nestled deep within me. I could hear the murmurs of fear-sodden spectators, their whispered prayers mingling with unsteady breaths. MIA's father hesitated, caught between the duty forced upon him and the instinct to protect his own. "I can't leave her," he rasped, looking from the officer to his daughter, who stood frozen like a deer in headlights. In that moment, the fragile net of hope surrounding us began to fray, each heartbeat in sync with mounting dread. "What if he needs you?" I urged, my voice raw and choked, a desperate plea that slipped from my lips unchecked. I felt a disorienting mix of compassion and self-preservation. Surely this man had a daughter to protect, too. But the enormity of the situation choked my logic as real fear sank in, gnawing for my own son, still on the precipice of danger. The officer didn't relent, his grip tightening on MIA's father's elbow. "Sir, we need to secure the scene. Please come with me now," Mia cried out, breaking through her daze, eyes wide and shining. She stepped forward, her small body trembling with uncontained emotion. "You can't take him. Not now. We need him here." The officer's gaze softened for just a moment, a lingering hesitation that filled the air with muted tension. "Mia, I know it's hard, but we need Toy. Don't care. He'll go with him." It was a whirlwind of an offer, an act of bravery birthed from desperation. Yet, before I could process her words, I felt as if the world was teetering on the brink of collapse. "Sweetheart," her father said gently, fighting against the tide of fear. "I can't just leave. Not with everything happening." But Mia stood her ground, the weight of the moment pushing her voice to heights it hadn't reached before. "I can't lose you too. Please, just stay." Inhaling a shaky breath, I reached for my own heart, that aching reminder of my son's absence looming just a breath away. This little girl, who had witnessed so much loss already, shouldn't have to battle this fear. But as I bore witness to their connection, father and daughter suspended together in this raw moment, I could feel the innate desire to protect burn within me again. I needed to know my own child was safe. Before I could intervene, the janitor moved forward, standing beside Mia. "Please, just give them a moment." His voice, rough yet steady, weaved into the cacophony of trembling hearts. "We need to focus on the child and the boy." There was a grounding force to his presence, reminding us that amidst the uncertainty, our hearts could unite in purpose. For a fleeting moment, the officer hesitated, torn between professional duty and human solidarity. But as he glanced at the scene unfolding before him, the sight of a father reluctant to leave his child an inch, and a little girl pleading for strength, relented with a stiff nod. "Fine, but we need to move. Just stay near the perimeter." MIA's eyes sparkled with tears of relief, desperately squeezing her father's hand as they clasped each other tightly. It felt like a lifeline amidst the turbulent waters. Yet amidst these brief moments of resolution, chaos embraced the edges of our reality. I turned my gaze back toward the boy, his breaths a tumultuous tide, wondering if hope could persist in such thin air. The doctor's voice pierced through the din of uncertainty. "We need to get him stabilized. Now." With practiced precision, the medical team surrounded the child, their movements quick and poised, inching closer to that flickering ember of hope deep among the shadows. As I observed the frantic efforts, my heart turned inward, a weighty thud echoing in my ears. A spiral of emotion twisted inside me, fear for my own child crashing against the raw vulnerability of MIA's plea. "Will he be okay?" I found myself whispering, words meant for myself but spilling out in silent urgency as I caught the janitor's eye. He didn't answer right away, turning towards the scene, his brow knitted and lips pursed. Thoughtfully, "I want to believe he will." His voice was steady, yet burdened, carrying the weight of unfulfilled promise, that glimmer of hope, that flicker of belief that somehow transcended the chaos, was mesmerizing and haunting all at once. As we stood together strangers in this tangled mess of a moment, I couldn't help but think of the pervasiveness of suffering. If hope had threads, perhaps they intertwined with the mantle of grief. A sudden gasp echoed off the walls, and my stomach dropped. We turned our eyes back to the boy, energy shifting in the crowd as the doctor's voice broke through the tension. "We're losing him. Someone call a code." Panic rippled through the air as my breath lodged in my throat. I watched as the medical team surged like a tempest, crowding the space. "No, no, please." MIA's voice shattered the moment and injected humanity back into the chaos. The janitor took a staggering step forward, eyes glistening with unshed tears, lips moving as if he knew a truth we didn't. I could see the storm hardening around each of us. As emotions collided like thunderclouds and darkness began to creep back in, I felt an energy drawing me toward that fractured hope resting within the battle for life before us. Just as I felt myself being pulled into the swell, a strong, terrifying realization washed over me. Something intangible, hidden in the shadows, started to unravel, a dreadful connection forming between our worlds that I couldn't yet comprehend. "Wait!" I heard myself cry out as the frantic gestures of the doctor fused into one desperate image. "What if this is?" But the words hung suspended as the sirens drew nearer. The tension coiled tighter. A revelation clawed at the edges of my consciousness, sending shudders through my entire being. I realized all too painfully what it meant to share this heartache and face the reality of something larger than ourselves. In that moment of despair, I felt exhilaration burst to the surface as the possibility of new bonds, soft, neglected connections stirred within me, colliding with the weight of what was at stake. I yearned for answers, for anything to bring clarity to this chaos, but the air, thick and acrid, held them fiercely at bay, and as my heart raced with equal parts hope and terror, I could only brace myself for what truth would emerge from the darkness closing in around us. The chaos faded into a murmur as I stood there, feeling the weight of the world pressing down upon my shoulders. I had wanted connection, a bridge to span the chasm between our grief. But what I hadn't anticipated was the weight of the darkness that shadowed us all. The atmosphere crackled with tension as we held our breaths, standing at a precipice of fear, hovering in the liminal space between life and death. Nearby, MIA's small frame trembled against her father's side, her eyes glued to the scene unfolding before us as the medics continued their frantic efforts. Their voices filled the air, punctuated by the sound of machines whirring and monitors beeping, an orchestra of uncertainty. Every breath they took echoed through me like a war drum, igniting memories of that day at the pool, when time lost its meaning in the swell of terror. The boy, unfamiliar, yet so vital, was fighting his own battle. I caught glimpses of raw determination behind the faces of the medics, their urgency relentless, yet oozing with hope. But who was I to wish for remnants of light amidst this onslaught of despair? "Mia," I whispered, crouching down to her level as I sought her gaze. "Stay with me. We're going to get through this together, I promise." She blinked rapidly, tears glistening in her eyes as she gripped her father's hand tighter. It was an instinctive reaction, a cry for help amidst waves of unknown. "Do you remember when you saved Daniel?" I pressed softly, reminding her of the bravery she possessed. "You have that courage in you now. Hold on to it." But just as I spoke, our fragile moment shattered. The boy coughed a shallow rasp that echoed through the heavy tension, and the air shifted, a collective breath released. Hope seeped back into our midst as the medics rushed to stabilize him, their chatter morphing into words of reassurance. "He's responding. Keep breathing. Just hold on." I was swept up in the current of emotions, a swirling light pushing through the darkness that threatened to swallow us all. For a fleeting moment, hope flared like a shooting star through our despair. Then it struck me, a realization that sent reverberations through my heart. This wasn't simply about the boy struggling in the pool. Each life entwined here mattered. "Mia," I turned to her, finding her wide eyes reflecting the weight of the moment. "You and I, we're not alone in our grief. We are bound by this pain, but also by the love we still retain. Each moment we share here now can pave the way to healing." I could see her hope flickering, wavering like a flame when a gust of wind threatens to extinguish it. But Mia drew strength from her father, who stood resolute. As if sensing my intention, he placed a hand on MIA's shoulder, his voice steady. Mia, it's okay to feel everything: fear, sadness. But it's also okay to hope. We need each other more than ever. The bond of realization cast away the shadows of doubt, illuminating a path leading back to warmth. I reached for their hands, urging them to accept that connection so viscerally woven into the fabric of our shared experience. Suddenly, the doctor's voice rang through the air. He's stabilizing. And the crowd collectively exhaled. Relief ricocheted like bells ringing in a quiet chapel. The boy took a shaky breath, eyes fluttering open. Mia's face shifted, uncertainty giving way to a fragile smile as her father's arms wrapped tighter around her. In that fleeting moment, we all felt a surge of triumph rebounding through USA, a fragile reminder that even in our darkest times, moments of light were only a reach away. But just as swiftly, the tides of reality did not relent. I recalled my earlier message, the shocking revelation that loomed over our fragile optimism, unresolved threads tangling themselves in this delicate tapestry. As I gazed up again into Mia's trusting eyes, I assessed my own heartache and summoned every ounce of courage. Mia, I started, feeling the heaviness of the conversation that awaited us. There's something I need to talk to you about. It has to do with Daniel, how he may have really left us. The words twisted in my throat, and I struggled to contain the outpour, cradling the emotions that felt on the verge of rupture. But I continued, focusing on the flickers of pain in her gaze. You need to know everything, as much as I do. All the secrets entrapping us within this grief. Together, we can confront this and begin to heal. Please don't shut me out. As my heart raced with trepidation, I saw the flicker of realization behind her eyes, a glimmer of acceptance in the face of uncertainty, foreseeing how the past could shape the future. It mirrored my own struggle to bridge worlds, to find solace and know peace amidst turmoil. I want to know, she replied, her voice only just above a whisper. But you have to promise me we'll do this together. No more secrets. I nodded, feeling a spark ignite between us, the warmth of mutual understanding stoking the embers of hope smoldering within our hearts. And as I glanced at her father, resolved to protect and to shield, I knew this was the beginning of our story. Not its end. As the evening sun draped its warmth over us, we gathered into a circle, the unbreakable bonds of loss and love tethering us together, a family reborn from the ashes of grief, eager to fight climate of forgetting that had once threatened to consume us all. In that moment, surrounded by the palpable energy lingering, I realized the greatest truth of all. Life, amidst its chaos, is never fully lost, just reshaped into something new. Together, we would lay the foundations for our shared journey, a journey toward acceptance, understanding, and a future that could hold promise once more. As we embraced the warmth of that night and prepared to step forward, I felt the echo of the past blend seamlessly with the dawn of new beginnings. And as I tucked Daniel's tender drawing in between us, I whispered a promise: our stories, heavy with burdens, would also lead us to places of light. The journey was no longer just mine. It had become a woven tapestry of all our lives, each thread intertwining into the fabric of possibility. In that charged moment of realization, I turned to Mia, my heart whispering to me as I softly uttered a promise I would carry forward, forever woven alongside them. Remember, we're never truly alone. Together, we will find our light.